The final battle took place where space itself began to break apart. At the very edge of the galaxy, reality became thin and unstable. Stars flickered like dying candles. Planets existed in multiple dimensions at the same time. The laws of physics that governed normal space meant nothing in this twisted realm, where the Harvester made its home. The Harvester's main body was beyond description. It was not really a creature or a machine, but something that existed as a wound, in reality itself. Looking at it drove people insane because human minds were not meant to comprehend something so fundamentally wrong. It was larger than solar systems and older than most galaxies. It had grown fat on the death of countless civilizations, but it had never faced anything like humanity. Commander Tae-hyun led the final assault in his ship, the Reality's Edge. The vessel had been built specifically for this moment using technology that had cost the lives of humanity's greatest scientists to develop. These brilliant minds had sacrificed themselves to understand forces that mortal beings were never meant to touch. Their deaths had made possible weapons that could wound something that existed outside normal reality. The ship dove directly toward the Harvester's core, while space twisted and writhed around it. Other vessels would have been torn apart by the dimensional storms that raged near the ancient predator. But the Reality's Edge had been designed to survive travel through broken space. Its hull was made from crystallized time itself. Its engines burned possibilities instead of fuel. Tae-hyun's crew were all volunteers who knew they would not survive this mission. They had families back on Earth and Mars and Europa, but they had chosen to die so that those families could live. Each crew member carried a photo of someone they loved. As they flew toward certain death, they looked at these pictures and remembered why they were making this sacrifice. The weapon they carried was humanity's greatest and most terrible creation. It had been built using the combined knowledge of every human scientist who had studied the ancient ruins. The device could destroy the Harvester, but the cost would be measured in entire star systems. The explosion would tear holes in space and time that would take thousands of years to heal. As the Reality's Edge approached the Harvester's core, the ancient predator finally understood what it was facing. This was not prey running in terror, or warriors making a hopeless last stand. This was a species that had spent 2 years preparing to kill something that called itself immortal. The Harvester tried to retreat, but it was too late. The weapon detonated in a flash of light that could be seen from the other side of the galaxy. The explosion did not follow normal physics. It spread through multiple dimensions at once, tearing apart the fabric of reality itself. The Harvester screamed as parts of it were forced into normal space where they became vulnerable to destruction. But the weapon's power came at a terrible price. The explosion created tears in space that sucked in everything nearby. Human colonies throughout the outer rim simply vanished as the dimensional damage spread. Millions of humans died in an instant, sacrificing themselves to save billions of aliens who would never know their names. Entire star systems disappeared into the holes torn in reality. Planets that had been home to human families for generations were erased from existence. The beautiful orbital cities that humans had built around distant suns collapsed into points of twisted space. The price of victory was almost too high to bear. On Earth, the news of the sacrifice spread quickly. Families learned that their loved ones on the frontier worlds had died to save the galaxy. Children asked where their grandparents had gone. Parents struggled to explain why entire worlds full of people had to die. But even in their grief, the humans understood that there had been no other choice. In the aftermath, Ju-hee stood before the reconvened Galactic Council, wearing a uniform scarred by battles that had nearly destroyed reality itself. Her black hair was streaked with gray from the stress of commanding humanity's war effort. Her dark eyes held the weight of all the lives that had been lost to achieve victory. She explained humanity's actions with quiet dignity, accepting the anger and accusations from alien representatives who could not understand the burden humans had carried. Some aliens called humans heroes for saving the galaxy. Others branded them as dangerous manipulators who had risked everyone's lives with their secrecy. The Vorthan ambassador accused humans of playing God with the fate of all sentient life. The Rillan delegate demanded to know why humans had not shared the threat with their allies. The Altarian representative questioned whether humans could be trusted ever again after keeping such massive secrets. Ju-hee listened to all of their complaints without defending humanity's choices. She simply stated the facts. The ancient records had shown that panic and chaos made the harvester's job easier. Every previous civilization that had tried to fight together had been destroyed more quickly than those that faced the threat alone. Humanity had chosen to bear the burden of preparation and the guilt of secrecy, to give everyone else the best chance of survival. The galaxy would never be the same after the war. The scars left by the final battle served as constant reminders of how close everything had come to ending. Strange phenomena appeared in the damaged regions of space. Time flowed differently near the dimensional tiers. Some planets aged centuries in a matter of days, while others seemed frozen in permanent twilight. Humanity resumed its place in galactic society, but the easy relationships of the past were gone forever. Other species looked at humans with a mixture of gratitude and fear that would last for generations. They had been saved, but they had also learned that their peaceful neighbors were capable of unimaginable destruction when necessary. The humans were no longer silent, but now when they spoke, the entire galaxy listened carefully. Everyone remembered that these quiet people had spent 2 years preparing to fight something that ate galaxies. They had saved everyone, but in doing so, they had revealed themselves as the most dangerous species the universe had ever known. Some aliens wondered what other secrets humanity might be keeping. Others worried about what humans might do if they ever decided the galaxy needed saving from itself. The fear that had begun with humanity's silence would continue long after their voices returned, because now everyone knew what humans were truly capable of when pushed to their limits. The first sign was not a spaceship or a radio message. It was the stars themselves beginning to die. At the very edge of the galaxy, where space became thin and empty, the bright lights that had burned for billions of years started to fade away, one by one. The darkness spread like a disease, moving from star system to star system in a pattern that made no sense to anyone except the humans. Ancient monitoring stations that had been sleeping in deep space for millions of years suddenly woke up. These old machines had been built by civilizations so old that even their names were forgotten. They began sending out warning signals in dead languages that only human scientists could read. The messages all said the same thing in different words. The Eater of Worlds had returned. Admiral Su-jin commanded the largest fleet that humanity had ever built from her flagship, hidden in the shadow of Jupiter's biggest moon. The ship was called the Silent Thunder, and it was 10 times larger than anything the aliens had ever seen. Its hull was covered with weapons that should not have been possible to build using any known technology. Around it floated hundreds of other human warships that existed in no official records. These ships had been built in complete secrecy over the past 18 months. They used designs that came from humanity's darkest research projects. Scientists who had been studying dangerous physics for decades had come out of retirement to work on weapons that could crack planets in half. Engineers who had sworn never to build instruments of war had broken their oaths to save the galaxy. The alien races finally understood why the humans had gone silent when their own instruments detected the approaching darkness. The first to notice were the Altarian deep space observers who watched the galaxy's edge through powerful telescopes. They saw entire solar systems simply vanish from their star charts. Not destroyed or conquered, but completely erased as if they had never existed at all. Terror swept through the Galactic Council faster than the speed of light. Species after species reported the loss of their outer colonies. Emergency sessions were called every day, but no one knew what to do. The thing that was coming was beyond anything in their experience. It was not an invasion fleet or a natural disaster. It was something that ate reality itself. Some civilizations tried to run away toward the galaxy's center. Massive refugee fleets launched from worlds near the expanding darkness. But the humans knew from the ancient records that running was useless. The harvester moved faster than any ship, and it could sense life across impossible distances. Those who ran would only die tired and far from home. Other alien races prepared to make their final stand. The proud Vorthan Empire gathered its greatest battle fleets. The Rillan Confederation activated defense systems that had not been used for 1,000 years. The Altarian military called up every reserve soldier and began building weapons as fast as they could. but none of them had technology that could hurt something that existed partially outside normal reality. Jin Wu was one of the human engineers who had spent the last 2 years installing secret defense systems throughout the galaxy. He worked on a team that traveled to alien worlds disguised as traders or researchers or tourists. Wherever they went, they left behind hidden weapons platforms and sensor networks that could be activated when the time came. The systems they installed looked like harmless research equipment or communication relays. An orbital laboratory around an alien world might actually be a fortress platform loaded with weapons. A deep space radio telescope could be a sensor array designed to track things that moved between dimensions. Even some of the gifts that humans had given to alien governments over the years were actually military equipment in disguise. Every human civilian who had ever visited an alien world had been part of this preparation, whether they knew it or not. Human teachers had mapped alien cities while working in their schools. Human doctors had learned about alien biology while treating their patients. Human artists had studied alien culture while entertaining their audiences. All of this information had been secretly sent back to human military planners. The Harvester itself was impossible to describe in normal words. It was a mass of dark matter and twisted space that existed in several dimensions at the same time. Looking at it directly could drive people insane because human eyes were not made to see things that violated the basic laws of physics. It had destroyed countless galaxies over billions of years, and each victory had made it larger and more intelligent. But it had never faced a species like humanity. Most civilizations that encountered the Harvester tried to fight it with conventional weapons, or they simply surrendered in despair. The humans had done something different. They had studied the ancient ruins for months, learning everything they could about their enemy. They had built weapons specifically designed to hurt something that existed outside normal reality. The Harvester's advanced scouts were things of living shadow that could phase in and out of normal space. They moved ahead of the main body, consuming smaller targets and reporting back about resistance. These scouts had destroyed entire battle fleets without taking any damage because conventional weapons passed right through them, like they were made of smoke. But when the first human patrol ships encountered the scouts, something different happened. The human weapons were built using principles that the scouts had never faced before. Energy beams that could reach across dimensions, projectiles that existed in multiple realities at once, defensive shields that could block attacks from beings that did not follow normal physics. For the first time in millions of years, the Harvester's scouts encountered resistance that could actually hurt them. Several were destroyed outright, while others retreated damaged and confused. The Harvester felt something it had not experienced in eons. Not fear exactly, because it was not truly alive, but something like surprise. These new prey were different from all the others. The silence that had terrified the galaxy was about to become the sound of salvation. Humanity had spent 2 years preparing for this moment. Every human world, every hidden base, every secret weapon was now ready for the greatest war in galactic history. The other races were about to learn that their quiet neighbors were actually the most dangerous warriors the universe had ever produced. The Harvester was coming, but humanity was ready and waiting with weapons that could kill gods. The first battle lasted only 17 minutes, but it changed everything. 3 entire Vorthon battle groups had assembled at the galaxy's edge to make their heroic last stand against the darkness. These were the finest warships that the proud warrior race had ever built. Each vessel carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon, and was crewed by soldiers who had never known defeat. The Harvester's scouts moved through space like living nightmares. They were shapes of pure darkness that hurt to look at directly. Their very presence made reality bend and twist in ways that should not have been possible. Matter began to decay near them. Energy weapons lost power and fizzled out. Even the vacuum of space seemed to scream when they passed through it. The Vorthon warriors fired everything they had. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroids shot beams of superheated gas at the shadow creatures. Missile barrages that could level cities exploded harmlessly against targets that existed partially outside normal reality. Nuclear warheads, powerful enough to crack planets, produced bright flashes that did absolutely nothing to slow the advancing darkness. The counterattack was swift and terrible. The Shadow Scouts reached out with tendrils of twisted space and touched the Vorthon ships. Where they made contact, the proud warships simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed or vaporized, but completely erased from reality as if they had never been built. 17 minutes after the battle began, 3,000 Vorthon warriors and their mighty fleet had been reduced to empty space and fading radio signals. Sang-min piloted his fighter through the debris field where the Vorthon fleet had died. His small ship was unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. Its hull was black as deep space and covered with symbols that seemed to shift and move when no one was looking directly at them. The cockpit displays showed readings that would have driven alien scientists insane with confusion. His sensors could barely track the shadow scouts as they moved between dimensions. They would appear for a few seconds to strike a target, then vanish into spaces that existed between the normal 3 dimensions. But Sang-min's weapons were not normal either. They had been built using knowledge taken from the ancient ruins. Knowledge of how to hurt things that should not exist. When he fired his guns, they shot beams of crystallized reality that could reach across multiple dimensions at once. The energy struck one of the Shadow Scouts, and for the first time in millions of years, one of the Harvester's servants felt pain. It writhed and twisted as parts of it were forced back into normal space where it became vulnerable to conventional physics. The wounded scout tried to retreat, but Sang-min followed it through a dimensional fold that would have torn apart any other ship. His fighter had been specifically designed to survive travel through twisted space. He fired again, and the ancient predator dissolved into particles of dark matter that scattered across several realities at once. Across the galaxy, similar battles were beginning as more human ships revealed themselves. Vessels that had been hiding in gas giant atmospheres emerged like metal whales breaching the surface of an ocean. Battle stations disguised as asteroids activated weapon systems that had been dormant for 2 years. Ships that had appeared to be simple cargo haulers shed their disguises to reveal hulls bristling with impossible weapons. The human fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Every ship moved with perfect precision, as if controlled by a single mind. They appeared in exactly the right places at exactly the right times to create overlapping fields of fire that trapped the Shadow Scouts. Their weapons lit up the darkness with energies that made alien sensor equipment overload and shut down. Yoon-jung coordinated the entire battle from her command center buried 3 kilometers beneath Earth's surface. The room was the size of a football stadium and filled with holographic displays that showed the position of every human ship in the galaxy. She had spent 2 years planning this moment, and now everything depended on split-second timing across interstellar distances. Her fingers danced over control panels that managed resources and troop movements on a scale that no alien race had ever attempted. She could see which human colonies were under attack, which defense platforms needed reinforcement, and which strike teams were ready to launch their next offensive. One mistake in coordination would mean the extinction of all life in the galaxy. The alien fleets that had been trying to fight the Harvester watched in stunned amazement as humanity revealed its true power. These were not the same humans who had been their peaceful trading partners and diplomatic allies. These were warriors who had spent years preparing for a war that most of the galaxy could not even understand. Every human ship was a masterpiece of engineering that pushed the boundaries of known science. Their hulls were made from materials that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Their engines could travel faster than light by folding space instead of moving through it. Their weapons channeled forces that alien physicists had only dreamed about in their wildest theories. The crews of these ships had trained for 2 years in complete secrecy. They knew how to fight enemies that could phase between realities. They understood tactics for battles that took place across multiple dimensions at once. They had studied the ancient records of every previous encounter with the Harvester and learned from the mistakes of civilizations that had been extinct for millions of years. Young human pilots who had never flown anything larger than a transport shuttle found themselves commanding weapons platforms the size of small cities. Scientists who had spent their careers studying theoretical physics were now using that knowledge to target creatures that violated every natural law. Engineers who had built peaceful exploration vessels were now maintaining instruments of destruction that could shatter planets. The Harvester had expected easy prey like all the civilizations it had consumed before. Instead, it found itself facing an enemy that had specifically prepared to fight something exactly like it. For the first time in its ancient existence, The cosmic predator was forced to retreat and reconsider its approach. But this was only the beginning. The Shadow Scouts were just the Harvester's advance forces. The real threat was still coming. Deep in the void between galaxies, something vast and hungry was awakening. Something that had devoured 1,000 civilizations was about to face the one species that refused to die quietly. The galaxy held its breath as humanity prepared for the final battle. Ambassador Thex could not sleep anymore. The tall alien with purple scales paced back and forth in his private room on the space station. His scales kept changing color from blue to deep purple, which happened when his people got very worried, or scared. For weeks now, strange reports had been coming in from all over human space, and none of them made any sense. The reports said that human colonies were buying massive amounts of metal and fuel and strange materials that nobody had ever heard of before. But when alien spy satellites looked down at these human worlds, they could not see any new buildings or factories. The materials were just disappearing somewhere. It was like the humans were feeding everything to invisible monsters. Human spaceships were also acting very strange. Trade vessels that used to follow simple routes between planets were now flying in crazy patterns that made no economic sense. A ship carrying food would take a long detour through empty space before reaching its destination. Cargo haulers would stop at tiny moons that had nothing valuable on them. Passenger ships were half empty but still flying to distant worlds every single day. The most frightening thing was that humans had stopped answering their communications. When alien traders tried to call their human business partners, the calls went to automatic messages. When alien governments sent official diplomatic messages, the humans would send back polite but cold responses that said nothing important. Even humans who had been married to aliens for years were not talking to their spouses' families. The galactic economy was starting to collapse. Many alien races had become dependent on human technology and trade over the past 2 centuries. The Altarian mining companies needed human engineers to run their equipment. The Reelan food producers used human agricultural machines. The Vorthon military bought human computers and communication systems. When the humans stopped cooperating, all of these businesses began to fail. Stock markets across the galaxy crashed as investors panicked. The price of food went up because human farming colonies were not shipping their products. The price of fuel went up because human refineries were not processing crude materials. Some alien worlds were running out of basic supplies. Shung Ho watched all of this chaos from his command center, hidden deep inside the Earth's moon. The room was filled with dozens of screens showing alien fleet movements near human borders. His job was to coordinate humanity's response to the growing alien panic, and he was doing it very carefully. Multiple alien fleets had moved to positions just outside human space. These were not invasion forces, they were desperate attempts by alien governments to figure out what was happening. The aliens were scared and confused, and they were making military moves without really thinking about the consequences. Some species sent small diplomatic ships to human worlds hoping to get answers. These ships were met by human patrol vessels that escorted them politely but firmly back to the border. The human pilots were always respectful, but they would not allow any aliens to enter human space for any reason. Even emergency medical ships were turned away. Other alien races tried to send spies. These attempts failed badly because the humans seemed to know about them before they even started. Alien agents would find themselves surrounded by human security forces within hours of entering human territory. The humans never hurt these spies, but they always caught them and sent them home with warnings not to try again. The most determined aliens tried to use long-range sensors to spy on human worlds from outside their borders. What they saw made them even more confused and frightened. Human planets were consuming enormous amounts of energy, but not for anything the aliens could identify. Power readings suggested massive construction projects, but the aliens could not see what was being built. In the Kepler star system, something incredible was taking shape. Hidden in the asteroid belt between the 4th and 5th planets, enormous structures were being assembled by millions of human workers and robots. To anyone watching from far away, these looked like mining operations or research stations. In reality, they were weapons that could destroy entire solar systems. The construction required perfect coordination between hundreds of human worlds. Raw materials had to be shipped across vast distances. Specialized components had to be manufactured in secret facilities, and then assembled in space. Thousands of human scientists and engineers worked together on designs that pushed the limits of known physics. Myran stood on the observation deck of Construction Platform 7, watching automated systems put together pieces of technology that were larger than most alien starships. Each component was a miracle of engineering that used principles most alien races had never even discovered. She wore a simple gray work uniform, but she was actually one of humanity's top weapons designers. She remembered the great debates that had happened after the discovery of the ancient ruins. Some humans had wanted to warn the galaxy about the coming threat. They argued that all sentient species deserved to know about their possible extinction. They said it was wrong to make such a huge decision without consulting their alien friends and allies. But other humans pointed out what the ruins had shown them. Every previous civilization that had faced the Harvester had been destroyed completely. The ancient records showed that panic and chaos always made the destruction worse. Species that tried to run away died just as easily as those that tried to fight. The only chance for survival was perfect unity and preparation. The Harvester could not be reasoned with or bargained with or scared away. It was not really alive in any way that other beings could understand. It was more like a force of nature, but far more dangerous than any hurricane or earthquake. It existed only to consume and destroy, and it had been doing so for billions of years across countless galaxies. So humanity had made the hardest choice in their species' history. They would prepare for war in secret and bear the hatred and suspicion of their alien friends. They would accept being seen as dangerous and untrustworthy if that was the price of saving everyone. They would become the monsters so that everyone else could remain innocent. The alien races were growing more paranoid every day. Some were convinced that humans were planning a galactic conquest. Others thought humans had discovered some terrible secret and were preparing to abandon the galaxy entirely. A few suspected that humans were building defenses against some unknown threat, but they had no idea what that threat might be. None of them guessed the truth that humanity was preparing to fight something that ate entire galaxies for food. The big meeting room in the Galactic Council building was full of worried voices. Ambassador Cry from the Vorthan Empire kept tapping his sharp claw on the metal table. The sound made everyone more nervous than they already were. For 3 whole months, not one single message had come from any human world. The humans who used to talk all the time on every space radio channel had just stopped talking completely. This was very strange because humans love to talk. They sent messages about everything. They talked about their food, their weather, their sports, their movies. Human traders would chat with alien customers for hours. Human scientists shared their research with everyone. Human diplomats never stopped making speeches about peace and friendship. But now there was nothing but silence from all human space. Here, other alien races were getting scared. The Rillan people with their blue scaly skin whispered among themselves. The tall gray Altarians kept checking their communication equipment. Even the proud Vorthon warriors looked uncomfortable. Everyone wanted to know what had happened to the humans. Q-Mean appeared as a shimmering blue ghost above the empty human chair. His hologram was fuzzy and kept flickering like a broken television. He was the only human still talking to the other races, and he was calling from a secret base near Earth's moon. His face looked tired, and his dark eyes seemed to carry a heavy weight that made even the strongest alien soldiers feel uneasy. When the other ambassadors asked him where all the humans had gone, Q-Min just said that humanity had entered a time of thinking and would talk again when they were ready. This answer made everyone even more worried. What could make the most talkative race in the galaxy suddenly go quiet? The Vorthan ambassador Cry stood up, and his red eyes glowed with anger. He was twice as tall as a human, and his claws could cut through steel. He demanded to know if the humans were planning something dangerous. Were they building weapons? Were they sick with some terrible disease? Were they dead? Q-Min shook his head slowly. He said the humans were alive and well, but they needed time alone. He would not say anything more. When the other aliens kept asking questions, his hologram just disappeared, leaving them all staring at an empty chair. What none of the alien races knew was that the humans had found something terrible. 3 months ago, a human exploration ship had discovered ancient ruins on a dead planet, far away from any star. The planet was cold and dark, and covered with the remains of cities that had been destroyed millions of years ago. The ruins told a horrible story. Deep underground, the human scientists found walls covered with pictures and symbols. These pictures showed the history of their galaxy, going back millions and millions of years. They showed that every few million years, something came from the empty space between galaxies, something hungry and evil that ate entire worlds and all the people living on them. The pictures showed this monster destroying civilization after civilization. It would come like a shadow spreading across the stars. It would eat the light from suns and turn planets into dust. Nothing could stop it. Nothing could hide from it. When it was done eating everything, it would go back to the dark space between galaxies and sleep until it got hungry again. The worst part was that the pictures showed this monster was coming back soon, very soon. The humans did math and figured out that it would arrive in less than 2 years. That gave them almost no time to get ready for the biggest war in galactic history. So the humans made a choice that broke their hearts. They decided to stop talking to their alien friends and start preparing for war in secret. They knew that if they told the other races about the monster, it would cause panic. Alien governments would fall apart. There would be riots and chaos. Some races might even surrender without fighting. But humans never gave up. Even when things looked impossible, they kept fighting. So they went silent and began the biggest building project their species had ever attempted. In hidden places all across human space, huge factories started working day and night. On moons that nobody ever visited, massive shipyards began building warships. Deep underground on Earth and Mars and Europa, scientists worked on weapons that no one had ever imagined before. Every human was now part of the war effort, even if they did not know it. Hye-jin was one of these secret workers. She was young with short black hair and quick hands that could fix anything. She worked in a hidden laboratory built inside one of Jupiter's moons. For 18 hours every day, she worked on designing weapons that could destroy entire planets, if needed. The work was so secret that she could not even tell her own family what she was doing. When Hye-jin went home to her small apartment, she would see her little daughter playing with toy spaceships. The child would run up and hug her mother and ask about her day at work. Hye-jin would smile and say she was helping to keep everyone safe. Her daughter did not know that her mother was building machines of terrible destruction to fight something that ate galaxies. Every human now carried this heavy secret. They all knew that their silence was the only way to save everyone in the galaxy. While the aliens worried and complained, the humans worked harder than they had ever worked before. They were not ignoring their friends. They were trying to save them. The alien races saw human trade ships still moving between planets, but they moved in strange patterns now. Human colonies were buying huge amounts of metal and fuel, but no new buildings appeared where anyone could see them. Human scientists stopped sharing their research, and human artists stopped making movies and music for alien audiences. All across the galaxy, the other races were getting more and more frightened. Some thought the humans were planning to attack them. Others thought the humans had found some terrible secret and were abandoning the galaxy. A few wise aliens suspected the humans were preparing for something big, but they had no idea what. The truth was that humanity had chosen to become the monsters so that everyone else could stay innocent. They were building weapons that could crack moons and ships that could travel faster than light itself. They were preparing to fight something that had destroyed 1,000 civilizations, and they were doing it all in silence because they loved their alien friends too much to burden them with the truth. The quiet that scared the galaxy was actually the sound of humanity getting ready to save everyone.